Welcome, everyone. I'm Lindsay Pollock, Provost at Sarasota University. Tonight we are recording this fabulous session, our Sarasota Colloquium. This evening features Dr. Suzanne Newell. And I had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Newell through a Dare to Lead workshop, book discussion that ran over the course of a few weeks. Through the Texas Association of School Administrators. And we just determined that that was not enough, and we extended our time together. So just so happy that she's here tonight and continuing this collaboration. So for those of you who are joining us tonight, if you could, in the chat, tell us where you are joining us from, and if you'd like to add your position and school, we'd love to know where you are in the world. Got folks from lots of familiar faces. Dr. Norman, good evening. Heather, Debbie, Monica, our faculty members are here tonight, and welcome to Annie and Devika. We're so happy you're here tonight. We are recording our session for folks who are not able to be here tonight. So if you could please mute yourself. And if you have questions that are coming up during the conversation this evening, please feel free to add those in the chat. And I know Dr. Newell will be excited to have that dialogue with you and answer your questions.
Absolutely.
Hey, Dr. Blunt, good to see you. Another SU faculty member here tonight. Thank you all for being here. So Suzanne, I'll continue to monitor the chat. See, we've got folks here this evening from Alberta, Maryland, Dallas, Connecticut, Florida, and the West Coast. Sacramento,
Wow, I think you
California.
guys have pretty much all of the country covered, or
I
at least
think so.
between East and West.
Yes.
Fantastic. Well, I'm super excited to be with you tonight again. I got to visit with the group back in June, I believe it was. Was it June?
Yes.
Yeah. So I started the generative AI conversation that evening and got on such a roll and forgot that the time zones were different. And so as I was launching into what I thought would be my next hour, somebody politely was like, it ends in 5 minutes. So, but we were really, I think, at least from my perspective, having a great learning experience together about generative AI and the implications of it for education. And so they asked me to come and do a command performance / part 2 this evening. And I've really been looking forward to it, but I have to be fully honest. And that is that as I was thinking through this week, like where to pick up from where we stopped last time around, I was, first of all, not 100% sure where we stopped. And number 2, I also wasn't sure if we would have the same people in the room this time as last.
Right.
So
good point.
if it's okay with you guys, I have a slide deck that's got an embarrassing number of slides to it. And there are 2 or 3 things that I for sure know that I want to include in tonight's presentation. But I'm really going to be a bit more fly by the seat of my pants than I'm normally comfortable with, because I want to make sure that the time we have together is designed according to your wants and needs. Yeah, look, Dr. Lorenz, we should look back and ask AI what we did together, right? Sometimes AI has a far better memory than I do. But let's just, I'm going to jump in with a few things that will help orient us to each other and to the content. And then I am just going to kind of design my presentation according to where we need to go as a group in order to learn what we feel would be equipping for us as we leave. So that said, if you haven't gotten to hear me speak before, I want to give you just a little bit of background about who I am. And I think I'll go ahead probably and share my screen. to get started so that you'll be able to kind of see a slide that sort of helps you get a sense for who in the world this crazy person is that claims to be ready, willing, and able to present on generative AI. So in full transparency, I really am just a kind of an overgrown first grade teacher. That was my favorite job. Taught pre-K. I was not in Montessori, but I have a degree in early childhood. So you can't have a degree in early childhood without having some indoctrination to the great teachers of all different modalities. I worked as a curriculum developer for most of my career in Texas and just stepped away from that about 2.5 years ago. And I work full-time as what's called a Chief Education Strategist, which is a fancy word for, I work for a technology company that is smart enough to know that they need somebody that speaks education on their team if we are going to sell devices and solutions to school districts and public sector employees. And so I work with them as kind of a consultant, not as a salesperson, thankfully. I get to bring all of the background that you see over there on this slide to my work. And one of the first questions they asked me when I started with them is, what do educational leaders need that we can provide them in kind of a unique way that helps build trust and rapport and also helps add value to the field that we serve? My CEO is a former middle school instructional technology teacher. And so if you can imagine the chops that she has in terms of now working at a tech company as a CEO, it's a pretty fun group that we get to spend time with. So anyhow, that's how I ended up with this, because my answer to their question about what can we do for school leaders was really, it was in that kind of whirlwind of the first year after ChatGPT was released. And everybody was at first kind of in this, holy cow, what can this thing do? And then their next reaction, at least in a lot of the schools that I talked to, was like, let's just shut it down. We've got to block it because there's no way to control this. It's unsafe. It's just going to be mischief. Kids are going to cheat. They're never going to learn anything again, right? And so we have progressed, I think, a lot past that, but we're still, as a profession, grappling with what does it mean? I'm gonna go one further than just like, what do we do with it? But like, what does it even mean anymore to be educated when we now know that computers are so capable, right? And that some of the skills we've spent lots and lots of time within a given school year's curriculum focusing on ChatGPT or other tools can create or produce those sorts of products for a person with minimal training in about a minute, right? And we have to have the creativity, the critical thinking, the ability to build upon those foundations in order to help prepare kids to be savvy users. And so as we think about generative AI, we can really think about it in terms of ourselves as learners. And I have to tell you that I don't have a huge set of degrees behind my name that qualify me to do this, but really nobody else does either because it's all so new. And so that's kind of the background I bring. I've dug into this a lot over the course of the last couple of years. And my goal for my company, and then also really just for me as a learner and an educator, has been to learn as much as I could and be able to translate that appropriately for the people with whom I work. So let's just kind of start right here. And I am going to try to figure out, it looks like there's some people in the waiting room, Lindsay, just in case you can't see that, I'm not sure. It looks like there's 4 maybe.
Thank you.
Sure. So if you're just entering the session from the waiting room, I'm about to pose a question to the group, and that is, on a scale of 1 to 5, where are you in your knowledge as a user of generative AI? So I'm going to stop sharing right now so that I can see the chat as it comes in. But what would you say in terms of a user of generative AI that you are? Okay, I see Dr. Norman Lorenz is a 4. What else? A 3. Okay. A 5. Good. Oh, good. Got some 5s in the room. We might need some people to come alongside me and teach this class. 4. Okay, fabulous. So we're starting on a foundation that is at least moderately savvy with the tools. So what I'm going to ask you to do now is I'm going to ask you to, let's do this since we're a pretty small group. If you're comfortable with it, let's come off of mute and talk a little bit about one of 2 things. I'm going to cast 2 questions out there and we can go in different directions. One is, what do you use it for most frequently, either in your professional life or your personal life? And then the next question is, what is on your mind and motivated you to come join this session tonight so that you can feel more equipped when you walk away than you did when you entered the room? All right, so you can either put that in the chat or, yeah, I don't, bless you, you have COVID and you can't talk very well, certainly. So either in the chat or you can unmute and join us with either the ways in which you're using AI tools right now and or some of the things that you would feel more equipped walking away from this evening's session. All right. Who's going to get us started?
I can jump in. One of the things that I've loved AI for lately is for writing copy with marketing things. I feel like like it just gets hard to write like pithy marketing little bits, and I feel so silly when I'm trying to do it. So if I put prompts into AI, ChatGPT, and it gives me a nice fun little thing that I can put out there, it makes it a little easier and a little less awkward for me.
I think that is a wonderful use. And I love what you don't, well, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but what I think I heard you say is you don't necessarily use them verbatim when it shares them with you, but it gives you a head start.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly.
Keeps you from starting with a blank page.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, absolutely. I'm seeing some things in the chat. Let me go back here. So it looks like LC, you can correct me on your name if I'm messing that up. I use
love
AI.
her idea. She said that she uses it to create recipes by entering the ingredients that she has in the kitchen, she or he may have in the kitchen, and generating lists for what needs to be accomplished.
Love it. And to create outlines for her writings. And this is from Annie. My son uses AI to ask questions about things he's curious about. I haven't used it as much as I'm aware of. I'm interested to hear more. Awesome. Yeah, one of the things that I discovered relating, Annie, to what your son does is that I keep the ChatGPT app on my phone and it has a little voice, like a little microphone. And so I have been known when I'm on hear me okay?
You're breaking up.
Is that better? Is that a little
Maybe
better?
type what you're saying in the chat. We're not able.
Okay, I'm going to go to a room that I think has.
Okay.
About that.
It's always the way. We're talking about
All right.
technology, and technology decides to give us a hard time. Never fails.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Are you able to hear me a little bit better?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's better.
Yes. Okay, perfect. Well, I'm going to keep my camera off at least for a few minutes so the Wi-Fi winds start blowing in a better direction. But my point in what I was sharing from Annie's comment about her son is that you can literally have a conversation with ChatGPT, and the app then saves the transcript of that, and you can send it to yourself. And then you can also summarize that chat in a few bullets as a to-do list or something like that when you get back. So that's a capability that I don't think a lot of people necessarily think about, because we all think about that big blank ChatGPT screen that says, what do you want to do today, or whatever it is. So there's that. All right.
I think one of the reasons that I'm here is because, and why I gave myself a 4 as opposed to a 5. I've been using ChatGPT since, the beginning. But what I find interesting about it is that, as you said, it continues to change. And I work both in the traditional or conventional systems as well as in Montessori education and leadership. And what I challenge my peers in any of those environments is to see it as a tool and not as something to use so that one can cheat. I don't choose as an educator to believe that someone wants to cheat. The only reason one cheats by the suspect of someone calling them a cheater is that he or she or they themselves have failed that learner by not asking enough trustworthy questions so that you could get the answer so that that person could think more critically. And I think that's what AI really has the opportunity, particularly for us who look through the Montessori lens, is to see that, like the pink tower, it can be used in different ways. And AI can certainly be used in different ways. Over the summer, I actually wrote a children's book based on a story that I experienced as a child in school, in conventional school. And it did an incredible job based upon, as LC said, when you put all those ingredients in the formula and then you ask it to do what it is you're telling it to do, as if you might be delegating to an administrative assistant. Or as a former school principal, I had someone who did stenography, right? And she would take shorthand. And I'm like, what are you doing? And she said, oh, well, we did this in the state of, whatever office she was in before she became an administrative assistant in a school. And wow, I could just blurt out and she would come back with the letter in about 10 minutes. And AI is just that. It's our new administrative assistant. And we can ask it and tell it, this is the way I want you to craft it. And it's a tool. It's a beautiful tool if we look at it from that way.
Absolutely. No, I'm so glad you said that. And one of the things that my daughter's an engineer, and she's a young engineer. She's about 4 years into her professional life. And to your point, somebody came up to her the other day. Her company has done a bunch of downsized, so she's like one of the only people in this department. And they said, you're gonna kick out of this. They said, we need you to write an RFP. Not the response to one, but you need to develop one for our company to send out to all of the prospective bidders, right? That would potentially be our be our contract for this particular job. She had to Google, first of all, what is an RFP, right? Like, that's not what they teach you in engineering school, right? And so they wanted her not only to know what one was, but to write one that their company could use. And she's kind of a department of one. And so where do you think she went? Right? She went to ChatGPT and she said, Mom, it was the first time I've really used it, but I would never have been able to build this project without it. And so to your point, I've been conducting generative AI sessions across the state of Texas with educators at least once a month or so for the past, I'd say 9 months. And it's interesting as I work with audiences, because I think they all come with the misconception that Suzanne is going to be the cheerleader for AI. And I'm a cheerleader for the capabilities, in the sense that it has solved some real problems for me and helped me become more productive or efficient in my work. However, I'm really more of an advocate for us as educators learning about it as much as we can, as fast as we can, because To me, we are entrusted with teaching students to be prepared for their futures, not ours. And we can't do that adequately if we haven't kind of caught up on this learning curve that really, frankly, was kind of thrown at us out of the middle of nowhere in November of 2022 when ChatGPT was released. And so my main point of advocacy is not necessarily to use or not to use. It's really about to learn. Because I feel like that is incumbent upon us as educators if we're going to serve our students in a way that prepares them for the careers that they will have. One thing that you also said, and I'm going to put a link in the chat because I literally just opened the link to this article right before we hopped on the call tonight. One of my really nerdy hobbies is to skim like Morning Brew and Tech Brew and all the newsletters that come out of different universities and whatnot. And this one came out, and it's not anything like, that's not rocket science. It's an article from Medium. But the gist of it was, and this is what made me think about it, the gist of it is that in order for the tools to do well, you have to kind of teach it. Whoops, I'm seeing a screen share there.
Yes, I'm showing the article in case
Oh.
folks are not able to see it. So I opened the article that you shared.
I'm seeing an Evite.
Oh, huh. Well, that's not what I intended to show. Wrong window. Thank you for alerting
That's okay.
me to that.
That's okay. I can actually show it too. It's not anything like, it's not a part of my presentation, but I think it does provide some really good tips, because when you just ask ChatGPT a question cold, it's not going to give you the best answer. You have to prime it and pretty much teach it who you want it to be the expert on doing. So yeah, there you go. Right tab this time. So that's in the kind of just unexpected benefit for tonight's session. All right. And to your other point, I am going to share this slide. Is it okay if I stop your sharing, Lindsay?
Yes, absolutely.
This is a slide that has been pretty effective as I've helped folks to understand kind of what generative AI is for in comparison to other big initiatives that we've had across the years. Can you think, and I hate to represent all of generative AI with a ChatGPT icon, but that's the one that seems to be most familiar because it sort of kicked us off into this new world. But what similarities and differences can you imagine as you compare the world we've gone through with the changes we went through with the calculator, the internet, and now generative AI, and how generative AI might have an impact that is comparable, if not greater, than the innovations of the calculator and the internet? All right. One thing that I am going to give you guys a chance to do a little bit on your own, because this is where some super duper rich discussion will probably come in. And I'm going to structure this a little bit differently than we did in the first session where I spent with you guys in January. In just a second, I'm going to show you a QR code. And if the QR code, for whatever reason, you don't have a phone or a way to capture it from your device right now, I can put the link in the chat. But like I said, I've been doing these trainings across Texas, and they're divided into modules. Module 101, I think, is probably not necessarily the right fit for our group tonight, because it's more like, what is it? And what's the difference between, or what is a large language model, and what does that mean in terms of generative AI? What are hallucinations? Those sorts of things. So those are sort of the basics. Generative AI 201, that module is more about like, how do I use the tools well, in terms of like the most common tools in the field of education. We've been looking at Magic School. We've looked at ChatGPT.
We've looked at perplexity. That's one that I've found to be very more common at universities. So if you haven't checked out perplexity, you might want to take note of that one. The thing that differentiates it is that it cites all of its sources, which means that to me, it's more trustworthy than say Gen AI. It's less likely to hallucinate. Okay, so I won't go into that deeply tonight. But what I would like to do, because this is kind of the favorite module of mine from the content that I've developed, because it really shows us all what the capabilities are and what's kind of happening in the marketplace right now with regard to generative AI. And that's a module that I affectionately refer to as the good, the bad, and the interesting. And so what I've done in this module, and I'll kind of let you kind of see how it's divided. And I'll show you the QR code here in just a second, but I know the minute I show you the QR code, you're going to go down a rabbit trail and I won't get you back. But there's a section in this module called the good. And in that, I've taken examples of things that I have found that are use cases in generative AI that I think are pretty unquestionably good. Like this is AI literacy lessons created by Common Sense Education, and the link for all of the things that you will see on each slide may be found down at the bottom that is clickable, and that way you can go there on your own. So that's one example from the section that's good. This is one that's some research around OpenAI and prompt engineering. These are some of the resources that are starting to emerge related to frameworks and guidance put out by states, et cetera. Okay, I know that good, bad, and interesting are kind of subjective terms. So I use those carefully, but I've sectioned it off this way just for our purposes here. And then I go into some things that are pretty, things that could probably be nefarious. For instance, this is an example of a proliferation of fraud with voice co-opting and things like that. There are news stories in here, what could go wrong in the political season that we're in. The lawyers that were sanctioned for using ChatGPT to file a brief that, and it made up cases that weren't actual cases and they lost their jobs. So there were some examples of good, some examples of bad. And then, as you might imagine, there are examples of interesting, and there are several in each of these instances. And so I'm going to give you about 5 to 10 minutes to take a look through some of these when I share the QR code, because I feel like you'll probably dive into the ones that you gravitate more to, but then you'll also have a resource to look back at after our session tonight. This is an instructional coach named Raina, who is in the Magic School AI program that is really, really popular in public education right now. This was a really interesting story about how an AI chatbot was trained to participate in improv comedy in Dallas. I'm dying to go to one of the shows because this actually happened not too far from me, but I haven't gotten to see it in person yet.
Huh.
And then this is a set of, that was one, which is kind of what prompted me to be philosophical about things, is what does it mean to be educated now, and so on and so forth. So you kind of get the gist. So what I'm going to do here in just a second is I'm going to share a QR code with you. I'm going to give you about 5 minutes, and then I'll do a check-in. We'll do cameras off for just a little bit to kind of jump into the slides that you'll be able to open up on your device or your phone. And then we'll come back together and talk about some of the things we learned. All right. So we're going to be a little bit kind of self-exploratory instead of just listening to Suzanne yammer for the next few minutes. You good with that?
Suzanne,
Yes.
I'd like to propose maybe 3 breakout rooms.
Ooh.
So folks could have some small group discussion while they're exploring. Would that be okay with you?
I love it. I love it. Now, what I would like to propose, though, before we put everyone into those breakout rooms, is when we've done this in the past, it does take a few minutes, kind of individual time to kind of skim through and see
Sure.
what you see there. So let's put a 5-minute timer on for like an initial skim, and then we'll come back together and go into breakout rooms for the conversation. How's that?
Okay.
All right. So here is, whoops. I didn't mean to make that go away for you. And if you let me know if you are not able to read that, and I will make sure to put the link in the, you can actually also enter the tiny URL.
All right.
I'm going to set the timer for 5 minutes. Feel free to turn off your camera if you want to, or you can certainly leave it on, but we'll set this and be off to the races. All right, everybody. That was your 5 minutes of peace and quiet. If you haven't had 5 minutes of peace and quiet all day today, that's what it would have felt like. But hopefully you have enjoyed going through all of the, or at least a few of the slides that you found in the deck there. And Lindsay, would you like to break us out into
Sure.
however many groups that you think are appropriate given our size?
Okay, here we go. And the assignment is to discuss what we
Yeah, what did you, I was gonna say, yeah, I would definitely make sure that you, the discussion can be kind of free form.
Okay.
But one of the things that I want to make sure you do is you touch on something from the good section that sort of emerged as something that kind of struck a chord with you or you found interesting, you want to do some more research on, something from the bad and something from the interesting, because when we come back into the whole group, we'll share and compare notes, some high notes from the things
Here
that
we
you guys
go.
found. All right, Miss, it looks like everybody's where they're supposed to be. Thanks for doing that.
Right, of course. I'm going to just pause our recording. I'm going to just unpause it right now. So breakout rooms. Oh, all breakout rooms will close in 30 seconds.
Okay, perfect. And I'm gonna go down to a room that has better Wi-Fi because I don't like to not like the weird thing of their perfect.
Welcome back, everyone. I can't wait to hear how your conversations were. We had 3 breakout rooms.
Well, now I look like I'm in a witness protection program. I went down to my husband's office, which has supposedly
Oh,
better.
there we go. Now we can see you.
Maybe. Okay, there we go. Well, I cannot wait to hear what you guys discussed. And so this next section will really be kind of a debrief of that. And we can look into, we can go back and forth on some of those slides. But based on the fact that you guys came to this session with quite a bit of prior knowledge, and Lindsay and I were just talking about the fact that it was kind of Montessori of us to have a conversation that was a bit self-guided in nature. So hopefully that worked with you or for you. My kitty cat says hello. This is very unscripted now that I'm out of my normal habitat upstairs. But let's jump in. What were some of the things that you found in the part of that resource deck from the section that we had sort of subjectively titled good? I'm curious what emerged and what kind of came to the top in some of your conversations.
We discussed that it
Go
would
ahead.
it's going to support individualized learning at a much deeper level.
That's so true. Yeah, absolutely.
May I
Was
say,
there?
I was in Marge's group with the Bika. So and you know, it's my opinion, and this I am learning, and I love technology. I mean, I am learning all about this, and that's the reason why I'm here in this workshop. Because I have been a Montessori teacher for 50 years. And I was telling them that I remember when the calculators came into the classroom and we were, oh my God, what, the kids are not going to learn the tables of multiplication. Oh, why do they have to, bring this machine over here? And little by little, we began to understand the use of the technology that was being brought into the classrooms. And we had to move on with times, just like Maria Montessori would have done. So I believe that what we have ahead of us is, yes, it's a learning curve for all Goldies like us. But I also believe that we need to respect the sensitive period of the child. And we need to show them these things at the right time and not make it completely available to them. There has to be, if you are in a Montessori classroom, you know the benefits of the concrete material for children 0 to 6 years of age, let's say, of actual experiences. So how are they going to learn to discriminate if something is right or it is true or not true if they just read it?
Those are really
think you
important points. Yeah.
I was going to say, I'm really, really glad you brought that forward, because that hadn't been in other conversations that we'd been having related to the developmental appropriateness of the use of the tools. And kind of how I framed it at the beginning, when I asked you that initial question of your comfort level with AI tools for you personally, that's one part of the equation, right, that we need to think about and speak to as educators. I think the other piece of it, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because we exist as a group tonight because we care about the education of children, young children. And that is something that I think we have to be really, I was going to use the word prudent. I don't know that that's the word that I want to use there. I just think we need to be very discerning, is maybe a better way to put it, in terms of the age ranges and the particular tools we put in front of kids, and the ways in which, because I've been talking with a lot of school leaders about the importance of teaching, kind of overt teaching of critical thinking, and what that looks like as we introduce some of these tools to students. I think that ethics education, strangely enough, and it probably won't get called that in a public school curriculum per se, but those are the kinds of skills that are increasingly important in this era that we're on the doorstep of when it comes to generative AI. And you all who are still working with people, either you're working with young children yourselves, or you're working with people who are, you know, aspiring to teach children and students. Those are the kinds of things we all need to be more aware of than perhaps would have been the case.
Well,
in our conscious mind.
Suzanne, one thing that comes to mind, you know, when I think about Rosario's comments, is I think about the sensitive periods that Dr. Montessori talked about as far as development, and I wonder how it would look if we thought about, you know, developmentally appropriate practices for the different sensitive periods related to technology, right? And related to this new area of human activity that was not evident, was not developed at the same level, right? Certainly there were, we would consider devices, right? In Dr. Montessori's time, maybe an inkwell, right? Or a feather pen or something like that. But certainly, and you know, there were discussions at the time, why are we moving away from pencils to this other device, right? This other technology for our children. But how would we describe developmentally appropriate practices for our children when we think of technology? Now, Common Sense Media, I know, has some guidelines for us that we can use, but are there any other resources that you're aware of that we can do?
Yeah, I think this is such an important topic, and actually it's one I'm not asking to come back for a third meeting necessarily, but I do think this topic right here warrants its own meeting, right? Where does Maria Montessori's, like you said, the sensitive periods, where do those things map into appropriate introduction to, usage of, exposure to, et cetera, the technological tools that are out there now? And I can only speak to, or I can only probably have time to go into right here, that most of the tools such as ChatGPT and Magic School AI and some of the others that have student components, typically the threshold for student use right now for most tools is the age of 13. There are a few that go outside of that boundary, and I think I'm comfortable with that as the age range. I think it's foolish to think that 9 and 10-year-olds who have iPhones aren't going to also use it sooner than that.
Well, and we see children, in strollers with
Yeah.
iPads in front of them,
Right.
and I know Dr. Blunt's sister is an optometrist, and maybe we should invite her, Margie, to a colloquium. But she really informed me about the impact of technology on the developing eye. I had no idea that this was negatively impacting so many children in our country who are experiencing myopia. Did I say that right, Margie?
Yes, and it actually alters the shape of the eye
Yeah, it was so
over
interesting.
time.
Mhm. Yeah, I find it interesting that many of the people who are kind of seen as Silicon Valley leaders in the tech companies have withheld technological devices from their students until they're a little bit older. I feel like that's probably some really important insight for us. And so, and I know we're coming up on time. I'm going to be more conscious about time this time.
Yes,
6:56.
there's always so much more to cover. I
Well,
do want
that's
to point out,
okay.
Dr. Lorenz is recommending the book, The Anxious Generation. If you're on faculty with Sarasota, Dr. Summers shared the cliff notes to that publication. And it's well worth the read. It does describe the conditions for developmentally appropriate growth. And it's a great guide and jumping off point to even deeper discussions.
Right.
Dr. Newell, I know you had an announcement about a course that you'll be offering. I want to make sure we get that into our time today.
Absolutely. So let me, I'm going to do two things. I'm going to scroll on past. We didn't get to talk about where is it? Here it is. We didn't get to talk about the bad and the interesting. And so it's going to be a cliffhanger. And I'm going to either let you put those in the chat on your way out. But now you have all of those resources you can kind of play around with a little bit. But I have just decided about a week or so ago, because I run a little consulting company on the side that is not part of my main day job, but they let me kind of cross-pollinate because it's mutually beneficial. And so the sessions on the content that I was describing that I've built, those modules, 101, 201, all the way through 501 are going to be a 5-part series. So 5 different sessions throughout the fall. And the QR code is right up there. I can put the link in the chat in just a second for this flyer that tells you a little bit more about the content and the timing and the prices. We have just decided that we're going to offer it as with optional credit for Sarasota University. So we're pretty excited about that little kind of organic offering that we have decided to create. And the way I'm designing this 5-part series course is kind of like really with the same mindset of the conversation we had tonight. It's not we should all be using AI for everything. It's we as educators need to know more about it. And we need a safe place in which to do that. So it is going to be 5 classes. You can choose from either a Saturday morning class or a Wednesday at around dinner time class. Tried to take it outside of the workday for the educators that wouldn't be able to break away. So hopefully either you can share that with some people that you know would like it, I think the flyer is linked in there. You are the first people to see it because my goal was to try to have that ready for tonight's class. But it's going to be out and about on LinkedIn and shared with some other folks as well. Would love to have you. What questions?
Thank you so
final-
much, Dr.
Any-
Newell. Would you
you're
like
so
to add your
welcome.
contact information in the chat in case anyone
Absolutely.
is interested in getting a hold of you? I will be sharing the recording post session. So if you'd like to share the information with others or watch tonight's session again, that will be available to you. And if you're a SU faculty member, just a reminder that we do have faculty meeting tonight at 7:30 Central Time. So I'll see those folks in just a little bit. And our next session at Sarasota University is starting a week from today. So fall 1 for our Masters of Art degrees in Montessori education or Montessori leadership. We also offer a bachelor's completion program for students. And we are so excited to announce that we've launched our dual enrollment program with the Center for Guided Montessori Studies. So lots of exciting things happening at Sarasota University, and look forward to seeing everyone next month at this same time. We will be hearing next month from Dr. Holly Forrest, who will be presenting on the topic demystifying dyslexia.
Ooh, I want to come to that too.
Yeah, come on. I hope you'll come back and join us, Suzanne.
Awesome. Awesome.
Well,
Thanks, you guys. I enjoyed
Thanks
being with
everyone
you.
for being here. And if I can be of any service, you can find me at our Sarasota University website. And y'all have a great rest of your evening. Thanks again for being here.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.